Better now than never, right?
Pretty much. There we go. We were like 30 seconds early.
We were 100% prepared for this today.
Yeah, I'm using the stupid touch sensor on my laptop, and apparently I touched too hard and clicked start. Oh, well. Oh, wow. So, this is our first of weekly podcast sessions.
Yeah, well, technically last week was our first weekly, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. we already broke the ice. We're good.
Right. No, this is the first weekly.
The first official weekly podcast. And as always, is guaranteed to be like the most okayest podcast you've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I like to set my expectations low.
Right. We are the least bestest.
Exactly. Oh, me. Anyway, so thanks for coming in, checking us out once again. This is a podcast where two friends just sit, hang out, have a good time, talk about some video games. And yeah, so I'll kick us off this week and talk about kind of what we've been working on and playing and all that good stuff. This has been a hurricane of a week. It seems like it blew by just as fast as it came in. So lot of stuff going on the YouTube side of things, like behind the scenes. I know it doesn't look like much on the upload schedule, but I promise I'm doing things. I'm not just like sitting on my hind end. I'm
sitting on my hind end.
Ace is the supervisor. Right. But yeah, I'm actually, if you follow me on Twitter, which you should, I am actually in process of designing a case/screen combo for the Mr. Project. It's a project that like I back super hard and talk about it pretty much any chance I can because it's really awesome. But yeah, I'm making what I'm hoping to be like actual metal case that looks like an old Sony PVM. It's been super fun. Like I was telling my wife that I haven't had this much joy about a project in a long time. It's like any second I get, I'm like, oh, let me make one quick change here. Let me, change this up a little bit. But I am actually talking to some people about getting this mass produced. And if it does, that'll be like the first big product I'm able to like provide for you all. No idea how to set up like an e-commerce website thing, so I'll cross that bridge when I get there. It seems like most of my YouTube career has been jump into the gigantic body of water and learn how to swim as I go. So yeah, that's just like one more cool thing. Other than that, I was telling Ace before the stream, I've reached out to family and friends and stuff, and I'm like, hey, don't throw your CRTs away. I want to save them, blah, blah, blah. And I was telling him, like, on the way home, it's gotten so bad that I can spot them out the corner of my eye, like going like 35, 40 miles an hour through the city. I'm just like, there's the CRT. There's the CRT.
Start smelling them.
Wake up in the morning. I love the smell of cathode ray tube in the morning.
It's like there was a Walker Texas Ranger one time, and he walks out, and this is probably the only episode I ever watched, but Chuck Norris walks out into this field in the middle of this airplane crater where this airplane wrecked, and apparently that wasn't a big enough sign, so he walks out and he like crouches down and like picks up some dirt, and I don't remember if he smells it or tastes it, and he's like, a plane wrecked here. So that's going to be you. CRTs, you'll just walk down the street and be like, there's a CRT nearby. I know it.
It's like you see those third world countries where they use like glass bottles to build their houses and stuff like that. Mine's just going to be like brick and mortar CRTs.
That would be awesome, especially if they all worked.
Yeah. It'll cost, my electric bill will be like $4,000 a month.
Well, if you want to make an omelet, you have to crack some eggs, so it's worth it because I'm not paying for it.
Let's see. What were your, K. Willery asked in the chat, what were your plans for the empty space behind the LCD, or was that for any extra Mr. add-ons? So, unfortunately, I don't have a good copy to show you all, like, what they're talking about, especially for the audio listeners here in the future, but basically, it's like the size of an 8-inch PVM that I'm making. Just so it looks scaled properly. It'd be kind of weird if it was like a really slender looking PVM, but it actually looked like some of the LMDs that like took their place and were pieces of crap. But yeah, so essentially Mr. is mounting on the back side, and you're gonna have the display like in the front. So there is gonna be a section of open air here. That is intentional because you could stuff a gigantic battery bank in there. You can, like, I have one that I use for my camera. It's like a 75,000 milliamp hour battery pack. I've literally run my Mister every day for over a month and didn't deplete half the battery. So you could just like set one of those suckers in there and, pretty much anything you wanted. HDMI splitters. So if you wanted to like split it out, make another port, all that good stuff. I'll do a more polished video kind of going over it like once the design's finalized and production can quote unquote start. But yeah, thanks for asking about it though. I appreciate it. Oh, I got a visitor. Hi. Oh man, we got visitation. She's strangling me.
Hi, Ace.
Hello.
I can't hear because you got headphones.
He said hello. But yeah. Oh, thank you. So
I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm looking at our notes. I see one subject on there. So tell us a little bit about the Mr. program, because I kind of know what it is, but I'm not that familiar, and I'm sure there's other people who aren't.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me.
Or I said program, I mean Mr. Project, I think is the correct way to say it.
Yeah, so the Mr. Project, I've done a little bit of a video on this before with a live stream. And this actually really does correlate very well with the one news topic that I was able to find this week. Slacking. But yeah, let me find my OBS. Where'd it go? It's right here. So yeah, this is basically like the biggest retailer of Mr. parts. So the Mr. Project is an FPGA based emulation machine. So essentially what that means is an FPGA can be programmed to replicate almost any piece of hardware. So you can download ZSNES or something like that and emulate Super Nintendo. However, with something like this, you can actually emulate the Super Nintendo on a hardware level. Mm-hmm. There's zero input lag. You can output via the Tesseract DE10 Nano, which is like the heart and soul of the project here. It's this middle board. Now, it has HDMI out. If you buy the analog I/O board, which is this piece on top, you can do digital and analog. So I actually use mine to spit out HDMI to my capture card, and then the analog goes to my PVM. So that way It's lag free on there. You get a good, nice feed. It's upscaled pixel perfect. There's all kinds of customization you can do, and it's completely open source. So there's a team of just like really smart people who can emulate these classic consoles, classic computers, arcades. You can emulate Commodore 64. You can emulate Game Boy Advance.
What about Virtual Boy?
I think you can.
Wow. That was, by the way, that's my favorite VR is Virtual Boy.
Actually, no. I don't think there's Virtual Boy yet. Just because it wasn't as popular of a console. Granted, yeah. Granted, they just came out with the Wonder Swans, so I mean it's probably right around the corner. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you can get all kinds of neat accessories, Mr. Add-ons. So he goes by Pork Chop Express on Twitter. Phenomenal guy, like absolutely killer dude. I've come at him with all kinds of dumb questions, and he never once made me feel stupid for asking them. But yeah, and he may or may not be working with me once I actually go to assemble the thing I'm building. I don't know what the scope of everything's looking like yet, but he definitely seems on board and very supportive.
So this thing looks pretty small. I obviously never seen one, but I can see the USB port and stuff, and compare the rest of the side. It looks relatively small. So is the screen box that you're making, is that going to house this and then have the screen up front, or are you going to plug this in separately? Is that the plan?
Yeah. It's going to house this unit. And again, like it fits like probably palm to tip of finger. Like it's only 4 or 5 inches long. It's really not a big device. It's a little bit bigger than a Raspberry Pi. And then of course like everything stacks. So this bottom here on the Mister is like 6 USB ports.
Okay.
And you can put Wi-Fi dongles on them. You can put if you have a certain configuration, you can get what's called SNAC or SNAC controller port, so it converts it to a Super Nintendo port or an NES port, and then you can use your zapper guns on your CRTs.
Is there a battery pack for this, or does it have to be plugged in?
It has to be plugged in. However, like I said, I've hooked it up to a battery pack. The biggest thing you wanna make sure you're supplying the proper amount of volts and amps.
Yeah. Which is my concern because I'm dumb, so I would never try to like make that work on my own. But if they had something out there already, that'd be cool. You take your little box and have the battery and everything in it, and you'd have a mobile gaming system that you don't have. It's like the Game Boy, kind of, but you don't have to like find the right lighting.
Yeah, and I know that's one thing I would love to do is design a handheld version of this.
Yeah.
Like, one really cool thing that just came out like last month or the month before, it's called like GPA 2P. And it emulates 2 Game Boy Advances at once. And I think they just came out with it for Game Boy and Game Boy Color. So you can have one person play on one screen, another person play on another, and like it's 2-player. It's just like you hooked up the link cable and you're playing. Me and my wife were playing Sonic 3 Advance, and like of course she was destroying me because I suck at Sonic, but yeah. So it's a really, really neat project, and they're constantly coming out with new cores, which segues into what I was going to talk about today. So they're so FPGA ASM SPAS. I believe that's a different language barrier there. Sorry if I totally butchered your name. I mean, no disrespect. he has developed a bunch of cores for the Mister project. I believe he came up with the Game Boy Advance core and some of the other stuff. Well, he is currently working on a PlayStation 1 core. That's a huge undertaking because the Terrasac DE10 Nano, that is pretty much the brains of this operation, has fairly limited like capabilities. I think it only has like a gig or two of DDR3 memory and some other stuff. So like we're starting to come to like the hardware limitations of Mister. So we thought, apparently this gentleman has figured out a way to make Symphony of the Night play on his own made and designed emulator. So from the way I read it in this article, and you should totally go check this out yourself, he builds emulators to play the games and then kind of researches like how it operates, like what needs to work with what, and then he starts building the actual like FPGA core, which will emulate the hardware of the machine. So essentially, instead of the computer like emulating software, he just kind of like plops it over, like connects the points, and it's a fully operational core. It looks really, really good. I believe they said that right now it's playing like 30 to 40% of speed on his emulator. So once he converts it over to hardware, it'll pick up the slack. But yeah, it's really fascinating how far people can just take like this like a few years ago, somebody would have looked at this FPGA and been like, okay, that's only useful for like maybe automation purposes. Like you're repurposing hardware that's no longer sold. Like maybe there's some controller board that fried and you're like, okay, you just connect the dots and off to the races. Here's your controller board. It plays just like the original. But to actually take this and be like, I bet I can make video game consoles out of this. Like, It just blows my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this kind of stuff. As I've said before, I'm not that much into retro gaming, but I think it's really cool. I'm really into all of this stuff, like talking about this screen that you're making and stuff like that. Like, I think it's going to be really cool. And, as one of the things that I have on here to talk about is Microsoft is launching the gaming service on Xbox. Mm-hmm. And of course, other companies are too. PlayStation's getting in on it. Amazon has a streaming system, stuff like that. But one of the things that I'm kind of looking forward to is when people come up with their own devices that will be able to stream this software. Because obviously, to stream, you don't need that much hardware. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I can see kind of the end of the traditional console, just getting more powerful and more powerful when they can just stream it in. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, I think people are going to come up with really cool ideas to stream it in and play it on things that look like these, old CRT televisions and stuff like that. And I think that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, and like, for instance, like NDI. Like, when that came out, that had a very niche use case scenario. Mm-hmm. And now, on the professional side of like video production and stuff like that, NDI is almost a standard in which everything's done now. So you can just like connect all your devices through the network and stream it through a little box about that big.
Yep.
And like, whereas before you'd have to have a streaming PC, like the actual gaming PC and all this stuff and like capture cards. Well, now you can just pipe it through Ethernet into a NDI encoder, and then that can actually pipe out to your streaming service. So I mean, yeah, it's phenomenal. Like I can definitely see where the console will be less of a like a buying point in the gaming scene, because like,
yep, for sure. And I mean, they're talking in the article, about Microsoft is already contracting to come up with dongles that you just plug into your television, and you can stream right from right to that dongle. How good that's going to be right out the bat, who knows? But as things are getting faster, as the internet's getting better, and we're coming up with better ways to make the data smaller to send over the internet, I think stuff like this is going to be awesome. It's a little bit shaky right now, admittedly. Like, if you went out right now, I think most people would have issues with latency and stuff, but as the demand becomes higher, they'll continue to put more money into research, and it'll just get better.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I think like fiber internet becoming more commonplace, like that's only gonna just expedite how fast we're gonna get there.
Right. Yep, we need to get fiber internet everywhere, and we need to go to Mars, and then I'll be happy. I don't know why I want to visit Mars, but that I want to see. Or obviously, I'm not going to personally visit Mars, probably, but I would like to see us get there.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I'm sure back when we landed on the moon, it was just like, whoa! Like, I can't imagine
blowing people's minds.
Yeah, although some people, that might be a conspiracy.
Well, I mean, when they sent Sputnik up, I mean, people were terrified of this basketball-sized satellite, that sent beeps. Yeah. But I mean, you know how it is. It's just like when 5G came out and 4G before it and 3G. It was going to cause cancer and all that kind of stuff. And it's really, I don't want to knock anybody's beliefs or something. If they feel very strongly that 5G is going to give everybody cancer, well, I do, because it's not. We've been using that in our wireless routers, a more powerful bandwidth for how long?
Yeah.
5G is not going to be the end of the world.
No. Nope. K. Hillary says several $1 billion, and I have two choices for anything approaching past 5 megabytes. Yeah. I feel your pain. Before I got fiber, I had DSL, and I had like, on a good day, like perfectly clear weather, maybe 1.2 megabyte upload. And it was like, are you watching Netflix? Get off. I'm trying to upload a video.
Yep. Fortunately, I'm blessed where I'm at. We just had I say just, but like 10 years ago, they built a new hospital here. And so they ran fiber all over the place. And, we get, I think the lowest I've ever had is like 200 down and maybe like 50 up or something like that. I don't remember, but it's a small area and we have a lot of backbone. So
yeah, and
that's what you get.
That's kind of how Roanoke is. We have it used to be a rail yard town, and now it's a hospital town. and anytime you see a building go up for sale, you're like, I bet the hospital's buying it, and 9 out of 10 times you're right. But same thing. Like, they started blowing up, buying up all this property. Well, now they're running fiber everywhere. So I guess that's a good thing.
Yep. Yeah, I mean it is. It is all for the best, I suppose. Because I love our internet. Just a town over, a friend of mine used to live out there, and he had terrible internet problems. And it's because they didn't have all that support. But anyways, moving on. Halo. Oh, what is that game called? The most recent Halo that's coming out. Anyways, they considered delaying, but instead they decided to hold off on delaying, not delay it rather, and instead release it without a co-op campaign mode. Personally, not a big fan of that choice. I think that co-op campaign is too important. And granted, I'm not a Halo guy. I know a lot of people like to play Halo for the PvP and stuff like that. But I think that the multiplayer campaign is something that a lot of people are probably looking forward to. And for a game that is almost exclusively multiplayer, to just leave part of that out, I think is silly. Ultimately, I think that they should have set fair expectations and got this done on time. But barring that, I think that they should, possibly take it and push it back a little bit more and get that worked out. Obviously at some point down the road, they'll put that back in, they're saying. But, there's always the chance that they put it back in with some kind of crazy DLC or something like that.
Co-op campaign DLC pack, $20.
Right. Exactly. Well, good news, guys. We finally released the campaign, or the co-op campaign. Bad news is you're going to have to pay $20 for it, but we added an extra map, so it's worth the $20.
Let's release this car. It doesn't need seats.
Right.
I like
exactly.
Safety belts.
So we're gonna send you your Tesla in the mail. We're just not going to include the steering wheel till next week. So
yeah. Oh man, yeah. I feel like that's a big kick in the pants there. Most of my really good memories of Halo usually involved like co-op campaign. Like me and a old high school buddy used to play the crap out of Halo 3's campaign. Sad.
Halo was the reason why I got my first Xbox. When N64 and PlayStation first came out, I opted for the N64, realized that I had made a mistake, and so I got finally saved up and got a PlayStation, and then Xbox came out, and everybody was playing Halo, and I misunderstood, because at the time, like, multiplayer from a console just wasn't a thing, really. You could have friends over and play, GoldenEye on your N64, but other than that, I really hadn't gotten or even heard, of playing console over the internet. And so, everybody was talking about Halo and how awesome it was, and so I sold my PlayStation to what became GameStop, but at the time was Electronics Boutique. And
you're aging yourself.
Right. I bought a Xbox and I bought Halo, and I played it for about 2 hours until I beat the campaign, and I was just so upset that everybody was talking this game up so much and that I beat it in 2 hours, and now I just wasted hundreds of dollars in the process. And it wasn't until years later that I realized that everybody bought Halo for the multiplayer. So still to this day, I have this like mental block with Halo, and I'll never play it. It's not that I'm boycotting it or anything like that. It's just every time I think about playing Halo, it takes me back to that crappy campaign that took like 2 hours to beat and ruined all my savings.
Yeah, I never did pick up an OG Xbox, but I went over to said buddy's house and spent the night, and we played Halo 3 and Forza 3. And like, I was begging my parents for a 360 after that. I do have to say, Halo 1's campaign is real weak.
Yeah.
Really weak.
I mean, I say it was awful because it was short. It was interesting. It was a good campaign. It was fun, but it was like 2 hours and I was done.
Halo, the reason to finally Cat 5 the house. Yeah, there you go. Just buy you an 8-port network switch. You're good. LAN party for days.
Exactly. Well, we used to do that with Age of Empires. We would go to a buddy of mine's house, and everybody would bring their, because at the time, laptops weren't playing, video games at all. And so we would take our whole desktops, our towers, our huge monitors, all that stuff over to his house, and we'd set it all up and play for days on end just playing AoE 2.
Not the rabbit trail too much, but man, I miss LAN parties so bad.
It's something that the next generation is probably never going to see. And it's really a shame because they were so much funner than playing online. As a matter of fact, I almost wish that online gaming had never taken off just so we could still do LAN parties.
Yeah, no doubt. Like 3-4 years ago, a friend of mine, like where he worked was kind enough to like host a LAN party. So like all of us brought our big old towers, and at the time it was like a pissing contest, whoever had the coolest tower. So like you bring it in, you're showing it off, and then you play games, and like Oh man, that was so much fun. We only got to do it twice, and then he had to go and quit that job, so we lost the LAN party site.
And then you always have the guy who usually hosts the LAN party, in my experience, who has this old dinosaur of a computer that he swears is like 10 times more powerful than it is, but manages to lag out your game session every time you get past like 20 minutes.
Dude, like some of the games, I think they were using like a circa 2003 server. And it was just like getting all of us connected in. It was a hassle.
Yep.
Oh
man, it's still. I have nightmares of playing AoE 2, and it was always I can see this guy, but I can't see this guy. Okay, everybody log out and back in again, and it was hours, and then we'd get into our high school understanding of how networking worked, and it wasn't fun. But anyways, Stardew Valley esports. This one I'm particularly excited about. I feel like I've been a little bit negative so far, and I need to turn that around with something that I'm truly excited about, and that's Stardew Valley esports. Basically, what they're planning to do is take 4 teams of 4, have them all play on the beach map, and then assign point values to things like getting to the bottom of the dungeon or, catching all of the rare fish and stuff like that. And then giving them 3 hours to just see, how many points they can amass. And they're having some, pro gamers from other games. They're having some streamers, some speedrunners and stuff like that. And I think it's going to be really cool.
That's super awesome. Like, of all the games, I never would have thought Stardew Valley would be an esports title. It's like
it blew my mind when I read it. It was probably the absolute, when I sat down to like read gaming news, that was probably the last headline I thought I would see.
Yeah, and I saw this article when I was this story when I was looking up articles, and I was just like, nuh-uh, no way. I mean, it is really cool that they're branching out to like these different things. So like, hopefully we'll be seeing like Minecraft esports and Terraria esports and stuff like that. Like, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there already is Minecraft. They already do a bunch of stuff with Minecraft with like tribes and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, one of my subscribers from Twitch, when I was doing Twitch, he was a pro Minecraft player, if you will. And I guess there is a thing with it. And I don't know that it's like, I don't know that anybody's going to get rich playing Minecraft. But, they had tournaments and stuff like that. And it seemed like it would be a fun time.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm loving that esports is getting some love, because it has had a dark reputation over the past like several years. Actually, decade.
Which is, I mean, is it any more, be honest, is it any less productive than like kicking a ball across the field?
Exactly.
Or, seeing who can beat the other person up more?
Yeah. Like a sport is just a display of talent. Like,
right, exactly. And I mean, let's be honest, if you're going to call NASCAR athletes, then then esports is definitely got its place.
Yeah. Don't even get me started on curling and water hockey.
Our Canadian friends will not be happy. Which actually, I would love to see. I would love to play curling. I don't know if you say you play curling or however you say that, but I would love to take part in a curling match. We'll say that.
I will partake in a curling.
It just looks so fun. Unless you're the broom guy, that looks backbreaking. It's like your mom giving you a chore all over again. Just as a matter of fact, that should be their coaches. They just bring their mothers in, like, oh, get out there and sweep.
I'm just picturing like the stereotypical like mother with the rollers in her hair, the bathrobe, and she's like shaking a flip flop.
Absolutely, out there with her paddle.
Oh, Lordy.
And actually, Kay Willery brings up a really good point, going back to the Minecraft discussion. He said nobody thought you could get rich selling Minecraft either, but, obviously Notch would have something to say about that.
I do have to say, half of those sales are bullcrap, because it is baked into like any laptop, tablet, stuff. Well, maybe not tablet, But like laptop, desktop, all that stuff, I always have to like uninstall it unless you build the computer yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm like, come on, guys, you can't count those. Oh,
But
man.
I can tell you that I've yet to meet, I've got 2 kids. I've yet to meet one of their friends that don't have Minecraft and that haven't run up their parents' credit card bills by just mass buying stuff off of it, including myself.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they're pretty good about refunding those.
Yeah. Yeah, that I imagine that was probably a thing they had to get used to pretty quick.
I would suspect so. I mean, it's not, obviously my kids aren't into like stealing money, but they just don't know what they're doing. They have no idea what the currency is and stuff like that. But anyways, moving on.
No concept of monies. If I can get this window to pull up here. There we go. All right. So our main topic tonight. I wanted to talk a little bit about like some attributes and mechanics and things like that of gaming. So, for instance, like one question you should always ask yourself when you're playing a game is like, or looking to buy a game is like, what attribute do you hold most important to you? Gaming is a very subjective hobby. Like you're going to have the people that are like sports games only. You're going to have the people who are first person shooter only, like real time strategy, that sort of stuff. But when you're looking at a game, like what's most important to you? Is it music, art style, like the visual aesthetic of it? Do you like the more retro looking stuff? Do you like the more hyper realistic titles? So Ace, I want to ask you, what attribute is most important to you?
I don't know. It's fun. That's the answer, right? No, I don't know. I'll tell you one thing that I can't deal with is certain art styles. I would say that any of these could make a bring. Music's probably, down lower because usually I end up turning the sound off, and that's horrible, but that's just what I do. Because usually I'm watching television, I'm listening to music, something like that, and I don't care what the game sounds like necessarily, depending on the game. I mean, I think art style is probably the most important. Maybe how it feels. I don't know if there's a good word to say that, but if you're playing a first-person shooter, for instance, when you pull the trigger and you shoot, like for instance, the Borderlands series. I like the Borderlands series, but I don't play them very much because you never get that moment of the headshot that the one-shot kill headshot and stuff like that. It just never happens. Like you're up against bullet sponges and you're just shooting round after round after round. That just doesn't feel good to me. Sword fighting games where you're just mashing, you literally just mash X and and that's all there is to it. Like that doesn't feel good. So it has to feel good. I think that's the most important. And I don't know what I would call that. I don't think I'd call that art style, but just its feel.
And I think that'll tie more into the mechanics side of things too. For me, story is the most important thing. I love playing Borderlands. I don't love playing Borderlands because of the story. I mean, some of the humor's pretty hilarious, but I like raids. Like, that's what I liked about Borderlands 2, especially. Because you could get into, like, the overpower levels, and, like, I will sit there and shoot a boss for 45 minutes so I can get a gun that is 3% more likely to do the thing I like. And, but overall, like, I play games because of the story. That's why I love RPGs, and especially like Legend of the Dragoon. That was probably like the longest story from when I was the youngest that I can remember, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was probably my first big story, and like I just remember being so engulfed by it, and like looking at every little aspect of everything. And then of course with any long story you can poke holes in the plot line.
Of course.
I mean, we talked a little bit about Star Wars earlier.
Right. I love Star Wars. I've got tattoos all over my body of Star Wars.
Oh,
But
that's
that
cool.
being
I
said,
didn't know you had tattoos.
Oh yeah, we've got I don't know if you can see it, but anyways, I have a TIE fighter, or I'm sorry, X-Wing on this side. Then over here we have a TIE fighter, and then across my whole chest is a piece of Luke Skywalker, or I'm sorry, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader lightsaber dueling on the Death Star.
That's so cool.
So yeah, I mean, I love Star Wars. It's been a big part of my life, but I despise the fact that Lucas basically gave creative license to everybody who wanted to write stories. And so, there's so much lore to it that doesn't make sense. And then, of course, when Kathleen Kennedy took over, then they rewrote everything and they cut out all the old lore. And, now they're looking at going back and even, getting rid of everything from the new trilogy and doing another restart. So, it's a mess lore-wise.
Yeah, and like... and you see that a lot too, like as a IP exchanges hands, and gaming is a fantastic example of that. Like a lot of times it's not one guy writing the storyboard for the game, it's like a team of people. And like sometimes just I don't know if it's the team didn't work well together or if there's one person that was trying to like strong arm the storyline of the game, but yeah. So story is an important like attribute. Now as far as mechanics, actually I messed up. We gotta talk about what we like the least. All right. So if how a game feels is the most important thing, you said music's pretty low on the list. Would that be your lowest attribute?
There's games, probably, and there's games that I really appreciate that have excellent soundtracks. And I own the Stardew Valley soundtrack, as silly as that sounds, and I love it. And I'll sit there and listen to just the soundtrack. So I'm not saying that it's not important in the it doesn't take a lot to make a good soundtrack, but I just don't ever hear it. Like I said, for the most part, especially with the strategy games and stuff like that I play, I have television going, I have, an audiobook, or I have radio or something going. And honestly, like people make fun of me because I will sit in a room and I'll be sitting there playing video games, and I will actively be watching television and listening to the radio at the same time. And it's like just this cacophony in my office of noise, and it drives my wife nuts. But that's how I like to do it. And the gaming sound just generally is not that big of a deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh. Honestly, if I I don't really know, because like music's pretty high on my list, because as of the past few years I've become more of an audio guy. So like and that's part of what I like rediscovering with some of these old games. Like if you ever play Aerostar on the Game Boy, that is like the most bumping Game Boy track I have ever heard, and I just stumbled across it one day. But honestly, I think I'm probably gonna have to go with, I don't know. I wrote the question and I don't know. Honestly, probably art style. is like the least important to me. Like I don't care if the game is cell shaded or, you know, is like HDR oriented where it's like super cinematic looking. I really don't care. As long as I have fun playing it, like that's kind of the baseline. Like that's what I base gameplay off of the most. Like, do I enjoy playing the game?
Right.
But yeah, definitely art style then.
There was a game, and I'm trying to pull my Steam up here, but it's not working. Go figure. But anyways, there was a game. It was called Xeno something, and I don't remember the name of it right offhand, but I bought it a few years ago. The concept of the game was interesting. You know, it had a lot to do with like, you know, insanity and stuff like that. You know, these people, a lot of people were crazy, and they would do. You know, this one guy's like bashing his head off of a tree, and they're like, well, that's what he does. He's doing it because that's who he is and what he does, and like all this craziness. And I thought it was really cool, but I just couldn't play it because the art did not connect with me. I did not like the way it looked at all. And there's been many games like that even though I like everything else about the game, you know, if the art style isn't there, I just can't do it. And that even goes for, you know, simple games like well, I can't think of one that I don't like right offhand, but you know, I really like the art of like Contra, and I really like the way the Mega Mans look. And well, you know what, the original Mega Mans I don't care for. Like that
a lot of people don't.
right. But you know, so I think, yeah, I mean, art style for me, that's your answer. Art style's favorite, music least favorite.
Yeah. All right, so a mechanic. So a lot of people get kind of attributes and mechanics like kind of mixed up because they both sound kind of similar. Like you might say, for instance, the game has to feel well for you to enjoy playing. Well, game feeling is definitely an attribute, but the mechanic that makes it feel right. For instance, you hate bullet sponge games. So basically, like that would be the mechanic of it. Is it's a fast-paced shooter, but you hate when your bullets don't do damage to the enemy. That's the mechanic.
You shoot somebody 1,000 times and no damage done. It's just so unmotivating for me to even pull the trigger.
So what would you think is a mechanic that has changed gaming?
Right off the first thing that comes to my mind anytime I think of mechanics is because it's the first time where I really thought of or heard the word mechanics used is with things like bullet time. And that came out, I don't know if there was before Max Payne. I remember Max Payne's the first one that I played it with. And, you know, after that, you can almost tell the games that's going to have it. You know, obviously you're going to play a Matrix game. They're going to make use of it. You know, Star Wars the same way. You expect to have some sort of a time slow mechanic to it. But I think that's really, since that came out, that's been almost overused at this point. You know, it changed the way that people do that kind of stuff. I'm not saying I like the mechanic. I really don't. But I think that it's changed the path of gaming in a lot of ways.
Yeah, especially PS2 era, which I guess that makes sense. That's when the Matrix came out. But yeah, a lot of the shooters from PS2 have a bullet time mechanic. And like it even transferred, I remember, to like some racing games. So instead of like a bullet mechanic, you would just have like the time mechanic in general, where it would like slow time down and you can make more agile movements. And
and even when they hide it, like you know, a lot of games have, a lot of racing games, maybe all of them, I don't really know because I'm not that much of a racing game fan, but they have you know, where the AI goes slower if they're ahead of you and they go faster if they're behind you. And I don't like that. I prefer it to be a level playing field where, you know, I can lap somebody. If I'm going faster than them, I will eventually lap them. Or, you know, if I'm going too slow, they'll lap me. You know, where you're forced to actually do better than the last time instead of kind of beating the curve.
Yeah, Rubberband AI. is awful. I hate it. I hate
There's
it with
definitely
a passion.
definitely in every racing game, Nintendo,
Yeah.
Super Nintendo, stuff like that. I don't know if they still use it. I suspect that they do.
They do.
Just from the last time I played Gran Turismo.
Yeah, like
But
any kind of arcadey style game, especially, they use it. But yeah, that like probably my first run-in with that was in Mario Kart 64, and like I would be whooping somebody. Next thing I know, they're right behind me, and I remember being I didn't know what it was, but I remember being so frustrated. I'm like, no, you were like 6 people behind me.
Right. F-Zero was a big one for me.
Yeah. Honestly, a mechanic I think that really changed gaming, and I do agree with Kay Willery's thing down in chat about pressure sensitive buttons. That was definitely a game changer.
That's huge.
But I feel like, what's it called? I didn't know it had a name until the other day when I looked it up.
I know what you're going to say. The boss button. Do you ever play the old computer games where you had the boss button, you could press F12 and it would close out the game? It was meant to be so if your boss was coming, you could just exit out real quick.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Commander Keen, Halloween Harry, Hugo 3, like those games all had a boss. And it was called, in the instructions, it was called the boss button.
What was it? The
motorboat.
Yes, the motorboat function. That was only in Leisure Suit Larry. You youngins don't know nothing about that. So risk and reward. A lot of people may think that this is a very bad thing. But according to Wikipedia, the technical definition is that some games include situations where characters can't press their luck, and optional actions where danger is a risk, where the danger of a risk must be weighed against the chance of reward. For instance, like Beowulf the Legend, players may elect to take a risk with successful yielding cards and failure weakening the player's ultimate chance of victory. I didn't.
Slay the Spire's huge on that.
Yeah. And so I feel like that was a kind of a poorly demonstrated but possibly good mechanic that could have been implemented like more and more in some of like the role-playing stuff. Yeah, and then another one that I personally love is like resource management. Like I love having to like juggle items and like make sure I don't like use all of my ammunition.
Right.
Like Resident Evil games, for instance, like you know you're in for it when you find a bunch of ammo.
Right. And you know what, honestly, that's such a hard mechanic to get right too. You know, I know a lot of people would disagree with me. I think that Resident Evil got that wrong on the lower side, but close to right.
Yeah.
And then you have, you know, games like, you know, I don't know, probably Command and Conquer. Where did I get that from? I was trying to say Call of Duty.
Yeah.
You know, where, you know, when you play through that campaign, you will never run out of bullets. And, you know, I agree. I think that's a really cool concept that very few games get right.
Yeah. And honestly, like now that I'm kind of thinking about it, I probably would put like resource management like over top of risk reward. I think that resource management probably is way more important than most general mechanics that are kind of seen in games nowadays. Let's see, and
I'll tell you one mechanic that I really like, that I've really been getting into recently, is with games like Ghost of Tsushima, like you know, combos, chaining moves together, and you know, in having that make a more powerful outcome, with games like Ghost of Tsushima, Monster Hunter, and even though I've literally played every Monster Hunter title that's come out in English. I never really thought about how much I liked that aspect of chaining the moves together. And, it's only 2 buttons, or 3 buttons, but, you have to chain those together in certain ways, and it, makes better attacks. And you have to put that with your timing. This monster's coming at you. Do you have enough time to hit 2 of them? And if you do, which 2 are you going to use,
Yeah. Yeah. And, so we talked about like mechanics that we think like have changed gaming. What are some of the tropiest mechanics that you've seen in video games?
So I actually went above and beyond. Well, I say above and beyond, but I didn't. I could go for a week on game mechanics that I don't like. And again, this has been a very negative day for me. So if you're watching this for your first time you've ever watched our stream, I'm in a negative mood today, and I apologize. But I could go for a week on game tropes or mechanics that I just don't like. But I picked top 5. The 5th that I don't like is weapon mechanics that don't make sense. And for instance, you see this in almost every single first person shooter. You put a suppressor on a gun, and now it has less range, which is the exact opposite of how it would work in real life. Because in real life, if you fire a gun, you usually see, what they call a muzzle flash that comes out the front, and that's wasted energy. Basically, it's gas, hot gas that's burning up outside of the weapon, so it's not projecting, the projectile anymore. When you put a suppressor on it, that holds that longer and uses more of the energy and causes the bolt to go farther. So, stupid things like that with weapon mechanics that they just either don't know what they're doing or they purposefully put it in there to make the game more balanced. I just wish they wouldn't. Number 4 is bad stealth AI. And this is probably a little bit more frustrating than I put it. I put it at 4. It's probably higher, but I'm not playing any stealth games. But I really like stealth games, particularly stealth games with that are gun based. And I can't stand it when you have, one guy, you could walk right next to him and step on his foot and he won't notice you there. And the next guy can see you from across the room. Because it makes it incredibly hard to, make your way through the room because you don't know who can see you and who can't. I like it when it's consistent. And if it's not, I think that's a terrible, I guess I'm not saying I hate the stealth mechanic, which is more or less what you're asking, but it is what it is. A mechanic that I hate across the board, I don't think I've ever seen that done right. In number 3 is special visions, like, detective vision in the Arkham games, where you have to hold this button and walk for the next 20 minutes in this special mode where all you can see is the footprints. Yeah. That kind of stuff really bugs me. Unnecessary time limits. And the number one thing I hate more than anything in any game is escort missions.
Yes. Ugh, those are the worst. Like I remember like I would actively avoid those in Warframe.
Oh, they're awful. I don't know who came up with the idea. I would like to find them, go back in time and have a long chat with them.
And like the first playthrough of Resident Evil 4 where you rescued the president's daughter and she's like, you have to escort her out safely. That is the most obnoxious crap.
Yep. I just don't get it. Why does anybody like them? Because if you're going to put them in your game, you're appealing, to somebody. Because I personally like gather missions, and a lot of people don't like that. So, you're appealing to someone like me when you put a gather mission in. When you're putting an escort mission in, I've never met one single person who's like, you know what? I like escort missions.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I only have 3. I didn't go above and beyond, but probably the the third trope that I hate the most is helicopter escapes. Like, if I'm playing an action game and the last sequence of the game is me hopping on a helicopter, I'm just like, look, dude, like, this isn't an 80s action movie. Like, like,
As you're saying this, I'm thinking of just game after game, Resident Evil,
Yeah.
Metal Gear, one of the Metal Gear Solids, don't remember which, probably all of them.
yeah.
I agree.
The third one was like that. And, like, that was... Granted, that was an understandable. Like, the whole point of the game was that you're in, like, Soviet territory, you're escaping. Like, obviously, you're not gonna, like, walk up out of there. I can a well-placed helicopter escape, I can forgive. But, like, when you're just, like, going through a building and it's like, oh, there's a helicopter on the roof. Get to the helicopter. It's
Right.
like, okay, I'm done.
It's the easy out.
But and then the second one that I hate the most is Amnesia. So I hate that you start a game and your character cannot remember who they were, or something like that, or something happens, they were a terrible person, and then it's like amnesia. Like, like, I feel like that is such a lazy story. And again, going back to storytelling being my favorite attribute, that is such a lazy storytelling way to do things.
It's everywhere.
And it's like, even like some animes are bad about that.
Oh yeah, I mean it's literally everywhere. I mean, you see that in anime, you see that in video games, you see that in regular movies, you see it a lot, and it's just like, really?
Yeah.
This is how you're going to explain this? And I get it. It's a valuable tool because you can, at the same time, you're explaining to the viewer or the player what this person doesn't remember, but just figure something else out. Don't give us another amnesia bit.
Yeah.
Amnesia's so rare in the real world. It seems like, 50% in video games.
Honestly, like, kind of going back, I thought amnesia would be a lot more common. Like, same thing with quicksand. When I was in elementary school, I thought both of those things would be a very pressing issue.
I thought my adult life would be dodging quicksand, getting amnesia. Boy, was I disappointed.
It's like real life pitfall. Like, I'm just going to be walking through the woods and it's like, oh no, quicksand.
Not to mention that quicksand has this ability to, like, suck you under, which, from my understanding, which I've never been in quicksand because it's so darn rare, from my understanding is that, like, you can't sink in quicksand if you wanted to. It's so buoyant compared to the quicksand that, like, it just doesn't happen.
And from what I understand, as long as you're not flailing around, you're not going to sink, like, that much faster. You apparently, and this is kind of going down a rabbit trail, apparently you can make quicksand on the beach. I saw a video where some people were, like, simultaneously jumping up and down. And I guess what that does is it compresses the sand and pushes the water up. So that way it kind of like mixes it and you'll actually create quicksand. And that's how they'll do like that sort of training. I guess if you're like getting ready to storm the Amazon forest or something. That way you'll be able to have like firsthand experience because quicksand is not that common. You have to create it. But
we should have put a spoiler alert on that for anybody who hasn't graduated high school yet.
Quicksand, amnesia, and cursive. It's all lies.
Now I write in cursive exclusively.
Really?
I do.
Huh.
It's just a habit. My handwriting is atrocious, whether it's cursive or regular, but it's a little bit better with cursive, so I've just always written in cursive.
Huh.
But for the most part, it's a lie.
We just dodge forgetfulness and sinkholes now. Yep.
Right.
Miss them. But yeah, and my last one, I don't know how to put it any other way except for the princesses in another castle syndrome. So basically
It's Mario 3.
Yeah, basically. So you're playing through and you're like, all right, I'm at point A. I got to get to point B. So you get to point B and you get to the end of it. And you're like, all right, cool. And then it's like, oh, just kidding. Princess is in another castle. And then you just repeat over and over. I hate that with a burning passion because, again, it's such a lazy storytelling tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're ever interested in storytelling, there's a fantastic YouTuber by the name of Plague of Gripes. He's a little more colorful with his language, so if you're like 12, you probably shouldn't watch him. But he is phenomenal about explaining a lot of these tropes and stuff like that. And it's like, when you sit down and you think about it and you see like kind of the action and the end result, and like how a lot of times these producers will get like from point A of action, like they did this thing, now there needs to be a resolution, like how bad they just flop it and like write it off. And if you just take 10 minutes and think about it and think where they came from, you're like, oh, the most logical thing to do would be to do this. So when Mario gets to the castle, the easiest thing to do would be to kind of Angry Bird style, where you beat the bad guy, but you don't kill him, but he gets away and you keep following him. Like, that would be so much more satisfying than like, oh, just kidding, I'm a toadstool, princess is in another castle.
Right.
But yeah, I figured that'd probably be a fun little conversation, like breaking down some attributes and mechanics and stuff like that we may like or dislike.
It's a good subject for the comments too. If you have a trope that you don't like or that you love, put it in the comments, and that'd be a great conversation topic.
Absolutely. Like, hit us up on Twitter and stuff too. It'd be like, hey, I hate when games do this. Like, no other interaction, just like, I hate video games that do this.
And going along with, I think with all of the ones that you brought up, going back to a question that we had earlier, I think that one of the hardest, maybe not most important aspects of making a good game, but one of the hardest to attain is originality.
Yeah.
Making something that's, it doesn't even have to be completely different, just a little bit different. It goes so far, that's one of the things I've been running into lately is, go out and get a game and, be like, oh, I'm going to check this out and see what I think. And it's the same thing over and over again. And there's so many games out there that are just the same as what came before it. And, I don't know if we're running out of content to make original games or what, but, once in a while you get a gem that comes out with something a little different.
Yeah. And like, for instance, zombies, like that's such an overplayed thing. Like,
change my number one to zombies.
Yeah.
I was sick of zombies when they brought out zombie mode for what was the Call of Duty World at War? I think it was World at War was the first zombies. I was sick of zombies then, and that's like, I won't even buy games usually with zombies. Like, I haven't played The Last of Us. Like,
yeah,
I'm just over it.
Yeah, like, and I feel like that's one of those things you need to give it a few years. Like, if you got a great zombie idea, sit on it right now. like don't pursue it. Just let it percolate a little bit. Don't forget about it. Don't write it off. But maybe don't just come out with like another zombie game right now.
It's not a dash to see how many zombie games we can get on the market.
Exactly. And it was like after I think it was Neo came out, you were starting to see like an insurgence of like samurai based games. And it's kind of like
which I like. I'm all about samurai games, but honestly, like one or two of them's enough. You give me Sekiro and Ghost of Tsushima, and I have all the samurai games I will ever need.
Exactly. And it's I don't know if it's like and this could be a fantastic topic to talk about like on another podcast, but I don't think that we're running out of content. I think we're just too busy chasing the fire. And it's like, this game was hot. Oh, that game was really, really good. We need to create our own version of that fire. And it's like, no, maybe you need to take a couple months, like brainstorm, be like, we're making a game, but we're not making it about fire.
Right. Exactly. And I mean, there's a place for that. So, when PUBG and Fortnite came out, that was kind of a new genre, and a bunch of people, jumped into the fray, and they're still coming out with new stuff. Now, I think that they need to realize that there's a lot of really good, battle royales out right now. They're going to continue popping out battle royales that nobody cares about. Same with zombies. Like, zombies were big for a minute, and I just have to say, I don't understand why zombies are such boring characters. They run at you.
Yeah.
But anyways, they came out with a few good zombie games, and then it's just the next 15 years is spent just beating us over the head with zombies. I expect vampires will go through that at some point, and probably werewolves. And after a few come out and people have got it, like, move on.
Yeah, and I do have to say that Dead Island came out during the time of like the zombie rampage, and it was actually really good because it was one of the few zombie games where you didn't have guns. Like, you couldn't just shoot the zombie in the head sort of thing. Like, you actually had to strategize and resource management and stuff like that to be able to keep your melee weapon so you could keep getting further in the game. So like, that's what I'm talking about. If you're going to come out with something, at least like try to make it unique. Like, try to. I feel like a lot of times nowadays it's just become so repetitive, and it's like you kind of forget what game you're playing.
Right. I think what we really need is a zombie game where you wake up with amnesia and find out that there's a zombie, and at the very end you can get taken away in a helicopter.
Dude, game plan. All right, just let me workshop this a little bit. You start out, you're a zombie.
Right.
But you get amnesia, so you forget that you're a zombie. Okay. And everybody's trying to kill you.
You have no idea why.
And you have no idea why. So you have to like escape at the magical helicopter.
No. This is a dating sim. You have to find a date while everybody's trying to kill you, and you have no idea why. Girls don't want to have anything to do with you, and why everybody's trying to kill you.
That's awesome.
Remember, you heard it here first. So when the game hits the market, let us know so we can get our cut.
Oh no, I think the stream. Oh, okay, it came back up. Woo!
All right, good.
We lost it for a second, but we got our game pitch in there.
Right.
Oh, man. Well, I think that is probably a wrap on this episode before we get more ridiculous and start coming up with the next like Final Fantasy plot line. Oh, me.
That's the next episode. We'll talk next Tuesday. We'll outline our zombie Final Fantasy remake.
Fan fiction.
Right.
All right, everybody. If you came by, thanks for coming and checking us out. Be sure to check out the links down below. You can get merch. There will be a t-shirt for the podcast coming out here soon. I was really hoping it would have been in, so I could have like wore it on stream, but USPS and stuff. But anyway, thanks for coming out, hanging out, and we will see y'all in the next one. See ya.